Okay, so I recommend that you check on the Swifties in your life today because, listen, Taylor has the biggest tour on the planet, and Taylor Swift tickets go on sale today. There's about to be a lot of heartbreak for people who just can't get their hands on a ticket. Today on the show, how did we get here? I'm Elamin Abdelmahmoud. This is Commotion. Listen, I hope you don't mind that we kick things off with this.
Best believe I'm still bejeweled. When I walk in the room, I can still make the whole place shimmer. And when I meet the band, they ask, do you have a man? I can still say I don't remember.
So today's the day. Today is the day tickets for Taylor Swift's 6-day residency at the Rogers Centre in Toronto go on sale. Those shows are not until November of next year. We are 15 months away from those shows. But you can expect to hear a lot about them this week because a lot of people are going to celebrate getting tickets. A lot more people are going to be very upset because they can't get them. This week, Taylor wraps up her U.S. tour. By the time that the Eras tour wraps up in total, it's on pace to be the most successful tour of all time. It's expected to top Elton John's current record-breaking tour. This moment of Taylor Mania is unprecedented. I would like to ask, how did we get here? I've got a couple people here to talk about the dominance of the Eras tour. Susie Exposito is a columnist at the LA Times. Mariah Crocker is a Swiftie and bookseller based in Edmonton. Mariah, Susie, welcome to you both.
Good morning, Elamin. Thanks for having me on.
Oh my gosh, I'm
Good
so
morning.
I'm so excited to get into all of this. I have to tell both of you before we even get any further than this is that I did not get a code. I got waitlisted for the Eras tour, which means that I will likely not be able to buy a ticket. Am I upset about it? Yes, I'm upset about it. Mariah, you got a code. Can I just say congratulations before we get anywhere? Like, it feels like you kind of won the lottery in a way.
It really honestly does. I should go buy a ticket after this.
100% you should. Okay, so the pre-sale for the Toronto show starts today. You've been through this chaos before because you didn't actually wait for the shows in Canada to be announced. You chose to go to the Nashville show. What was it like getting those tickets?
It was really, really hard. I don't think I've ever experienced buying tickets like that before. I remember I asked for the morning off work. The queues were obviously so backlogged with so many people that it ended up getting paused. And then I ended up going to work anyways because it was a couple hours into the ticket sale and they were like, just come to work and you can do it on your laptop. So I went to work and from start to finish, I logged in, I think at 8:30 or 9:30 a.m. and it took 7 hours.
Oh my God.
To get the tickets. Yeah.
So you went through this is the supposedly normal ticket buying process. That's you just went through it and it took 7 hours to get through it.
Yeah, I feel like I was on Twitter with so many people just refreshing the hashtags and everyone was experiencing the same things.
That is extraordinary. Listen, there's been some coverage of the fact that after concerts, some fans have described basically blacking out and having trouble remembering anything that happened at the show because it was this massive state of euphoria. Did that happen to you in Nashville, or do you remember every little detail of it?
No, it's so funny because I'll watch video clips from other people's perspective of the show and they'll be like, oh, I loved when Taylor did this. And I was like, wow, I don't remember experiencing that.
I think there's something kind of amazing about finally arriving at a place like the Eras tour and then being overwhelmed with all those details to the point where your brain is I can't retain any of those things. Susie, you covered one of Taylor's shows in LA. Right now she's doing a six-day run in LA as well. You covered it for the LA Times. What stood out for you about that show?
Oh man, just the production quality, of course. This was Taylor's first ever time performing at the SoFi Stadium. Yeah. It's massive. And she sold it out 6 times, which is incredible. But I think my favorite part was definitely the part where, she emerged in this red sequin gown and was like, I hope y'all got 10 minutes because I have a song for you. And we immediately knew she was going to sing the extended version of All Too Well. And it was just so funny. I think my favorite part was the part where she sings about her ex's, F the patriarchy keychain.
Yes.
And just looking over and seeing all these tweens like shout, F the patriarchy, like extra loud, extra spicy. I was really feeling it, especially for my middle school self. So just the sheer amount of joy from the fans too was something I really enjoyed.
I love that. It's also something that really stood out for me in your story is that, you when I kind of went about looking for beads, like little beads to make friendship bracelets with in LA, I see that you're wearing a bunch of them on your wrist right now. Because so Taylor has this like one line that is kind of a throwaway line, I'm not going to lie to you, in You're On Your Own, Kid. And then it becomes like basically this marching order for the fandom to bring friendship bracelets to the shows and then exchange them. But also, you had a hard time finding beads in LA. I kind of like that point because it illustrates the maybe unexpected consequence of what happens when Taylor Swift descends upon your city. What happened there?
This happened across multiple cities in the US where Swifties, they would go to their local craft store looking for letter beads, because the friendship bracelets, it's like the important thing is that they include, a song title or a reference to something Taylor Swift related. And I searched all over greater Los Angeles and could not find letter beads anywhere. And so I went as far as like the suburbs. I went to Pasadena the day of the show and encountered multiple women there, just scouring the place for letter beads. And at some point, I happened upon this mom who was really frustrated. She's like, why am I even doing this? And then there were a couple girls who were, just like sifting through all the craft beads. And one of them was like, oh my God, I found them. And 2 seconds later, I could hear her be like, oh no, they're all numbers,
Yeah, there's something kind of extraordinary about the number of bracelets that people make. I mean, like people show up and they don't make like one or two to trade with other people. People, at the show that I went to, people maybe brought like 40 or 50 with them to exchange with other people. Like you just see an entire armful of bracelets, which is kind of lovely to see, honestly. Mariah, we should talk about the fact that Taylor left Canada out of the initial Eras tour up until this last week. She announced that, she's going to be doing all these 6 shows. But then the announcement also says, all the shows are in Toronto. You're an Albertan. How does that sit with you?
It was definitely like a little disappointing and maybe a little delusional of me to think that after the success of all the pre-sale signups for Toronto, that she would at least announce maybe like a show somewhere in the West Coast, like Vancouver. I was hoping Edmonton. Maybe that was extra delusional of me. But
it's a large stadium.
It's like, we do have a pretty big stadium.
Yeah.
And I feel like as like someone who lives in the prairies, most artists just go to those places like Toronto and Vancouver. And so we're always having to travel at least a little bit to hit like these big people who won't come to the prairies. But I'm happy. At least it's 6 shows. I was nervous if it was only going to be like 3 or 2.
Of course. I think like that was what the worry was because of how much demand there is in Canada. We should say, Susie, only 3 cities this entire run got 6 consecutive shows of the Eras Tour. Los Angeles being one of them, Kalangan, Singapore being the other, and then Toronto. London is getting 6 shows, but they're broken up. They're not, it's 3 shows and then a few months later, another 3 shows. What lessons do you think Toronto can take away from the experience in LA? Like what happened? What happened in LA when you get 6 consecutive shows from Taylor Swift?
In my experience, you get a lot of gridlock.
Okay. Noted.
I drove my own car and regretted it. Los Angeles, our metro system, they actually expanded it for use for Taylor shows, like they have, they added a bunch of like stops, shuttles, things like that, so that people could get there more easily through public transit. And I wish I took advantage of that. If you can go in a group, whatever makes you feel safer. But public transit is so key. And I'm saying this as someone who drives. I wish I took public transit.
Mariah, we should say, the Toronto shows are at this point over a year away. They're 15 months from now. does it feel weird to be buying something that far in advance? Like, you're not going to be the same person you are now in 15 months. You're going to have at least one birthday in that period of time. So does it feel a little bit strange to sort of try to plan that far ahead for you?
It does. I mean, I know I got the pre-sale code and the sale goes on in 45 minutes to try to get the tickets. And I just can't believe, like, I remember when they were announced, I was like, November this year? I don't know if I can like prepare for that, like getting flights and like accommodations. And then I was like, oh no, it's in 2024. Like, I have over a year to like get excited. I remember when I bought the tickets back in November last year for the May show, I was like, okay, I have 6 months until the show. Like, I have never looked more forward to something in a really long time.
Yeah.
And I feel like that is just going to happen again with this. Like, I have 15 months to prepare. I mean, I'll have a ton of time to make friendship bracelets, at least, is the perk.
You can really make quite a stockpile in 15 months or so. I think that's a pretty good run up for that. I have to say, the idea of you sitting there, you're 45 minutes away because you have a code, so you're 45 minutes away from actually being able to buy those tickets. And there's a bunch of people listening, including me, listening to you, who don't have a code. And I'm very jealous about this. And I will process this and I will get past it. But my bigger question is, what is your advice for people who are listening to this who are also trying to get tickets this week?
I mean, it's so hard to say because the code distribution system is so random that, like, I know people who had 30 people sign up in total for them and all got waitlisted. So it really, like, once you join the queue, I feel like it's all just in fate's hands. Like, if you're gonna get like tickets, I mean, it seems like this time around a lot less people got codes, which I think is like a good thing and a bad thing because it won't be as hectic as the first time around.
Yeah.
I think, I think my biggest piece of advice is, like, don't waste time, like, clicking the seats physically when you're looking at the map. Instead, like, use the list system. It's so much quicker. And that's how, like, I ended up getting my tickets, was just the list system all the time and constantly don't like refresh the browser, but like filter from 1 ticket to 2 tickets to 3 tickets just to see what's available. Cause people will like click seats and then discard them if they're not what they want. And so you can always find something.
Okay. That sounded pretty hopeful. Like, I hear that and go, you know what? That's pretty optimistic. I like how optimistic you are. Susie, we should zoom out a little bit and say, the fact that the Eras Tour is on pace to become the highest grossing tour of all time. There's like a viral clip from every show. There's a new headline basically every week. Has there ever been another tour like this one, do you think?
I would say yes. The most recent comparison is Bad Bunny's most recent tour in 2022. The Puerto Rican artist, he broke the world record for the highest grossing tour in 1 calendar year. He made over $435 million across 81 shows. So, I mean, he packs a punch.
Sure, of course.
And so I feel like, Taylor Swift probably saw this number and was like, okay, bet, like, I can beat that. She probably, she's on a roll. She's on a roll this year. So we'll see. And we also have Beyonce, the Renaissance tour, also a stadium tour. I'll also be seeing her in September. Bad Bunny, he's got these divas just locked and loaded. They're ready to beat this record. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
I mean, there's something about the size of these tours, the excitement that people have to see all these tours, that feels kind of magical to me, especially after a few years of the pandemic, of not being able to sort of gather with a bunch of people and just like watch live music again. I'm just, I'm excited to be in the company of people, crying with them. I think that's the best part of all these tours. Mariah, last word to you. For now, the very last Eras Tour date is November 23rd in Toronto. If it is in fact the last date of the Eras Tour, what would it mean to see her close out this entire tour right here in Canada?
I mean, I feel like no one ever closes out a tour in Canada that I've seen. It's always like more dates, like international.
Yeah.
And I feel like, to me, I think she's going to add more dates. It's so popular. Like, everyone wants to see this show. Like, I know she added a few more US dates with Canada. And I feel like over the next couple months, I don't know, I think she'll announce some more.
Susie, you were nodding there just a moment ago. You think she's going to also add maybe a second leg of the U.S. tour?
Oh, totally. I can see her. I mean, I can see her doing anything at this point, but we have over a year to go. You know,
that's the part I keep trying to remember is, we are not even halfway through the Eras Tour at this point, and there's still a lot more to come. I'm sure that we will continue to have a conversation about Taylor Swift and the dominance of this tour. But in the meantime, Susie, Mariah, thank you so much for being on the show today. Thank you.
Thank you
so much.
Of course. Susie Exposito is a columnist at the LA Times. Mariah Crocker is a Swiftie and a bookseller based in Edmonton. I'm Elamin Abdelmahmoud. You're listening to Commotion. Listen, you may have heard in the news yesterday. Tory Lanez, the Toronto rapper, was sentenced to 10 years in prison for shooting Megan Thee Stallion. Tory Lanez shot Megan Thee Stallion in the foot after they left a party in Los Angeles in 2020. Last December, he was found guilty on all 3 gun-related charges. Here's what LA District Attorney George Garcon had to say about the sentencing.
Despite the physical violence, verbal attacks, and attempts at public humiliation, Ms. Pete remained strong and shared the events of that fateful night with the jury and the world. The fact that Ms. Pete is a successful entertainer has brought a spotlight on the important issue of violence against women.
That's LA District Attorney George Gascon talking about the sentencing of Tory Lanez. Ever since Megan Thee Stallion came forward, she has faced this outrageous onslaught of attacks directed at her. Everyone has weighed in, with a lot of people questioning whether Megan was telling the truth at all about what happened. To talk about yesterday's sentencing and also look back on this case, Tayo Barrow is here. Tayo, welcome to the show.
Morning.
Tayo, can I just start by saying what went through your mind when you heard Tory Lanez was sentenced to 10 years in prison?
I definitely breathed a sigh of relief. And I do have to say, for the record, as an abolitionist, it's never a good day to see, another person be absorbed into the carceral system. But I will say I was happy when, that this turned out the way it did. I was glad to see the law kind of finally work, and I'm putting work in air quotes, the way it's supposed to, but also ultimately to have it on record. And that's been my biggest thing since this even went to trial, is that it needs to be on public record that this woman did not lie, that this woman was victimized, and that, we all should kind of look back and really have a rethink about the way that her story was handled.
There's been something that's kind of been making me uncomfortable, which is that ever since, even since Tory Lanez was found guilty, which was last December, you still see a lot of news headlines sort of say allegedly, and it's no, this man was actually convicted of this. We certainly, at least as far as we know, we can take out the allegedly out of these things and take Megan at her word, but also take the verdict at his word. So this story first broke 3 years ago. There were all these reactions to it. Last time you were on the show, we talked about all the vicious attacks that Megan had been facing throughout the trial, before the trial. There were a bunch of speculations that Drake dissed Megan in a song. And then since Tory was found guilty last December, have those attacks actually stopped?
Oh, absolutely not. And you can even see that in the reaction, in the response that people have had to the sentencing, even up until this morning, this man has been convicted. He has been sentenced, according to the law, he did this. And we know we can take out the allegedly, like you said, we know that this happened. Yeah. But people still choose not to believe her. And to this day, people are still questioning whether she was truthful, but also kind of blaming her for now, putting a Black man in jail, quote unquote.
Right. Well, I was going to say, hours before the sentencing, there was this news story that broke that the judge had received all these letters in support of Tory Lanez. One of the biggest headlines out of those letters was the Australian rapper Iggy Azalea. She, in her letter, asked the judge for a sentence that was, quote, transformative, not life-destroying. What do you make of those letters, and maybe particularly Iggy's letter?
I honestly, I was really disappointed and disgusted, really, because it was just interesting to me to see a woman, like Iggy Azalea, who is a woman who also, from her, according to her own, accounts, has been, kind of similarly victimized by this hyper-masculine culture within hip-hop. And to see her come out in support of Tory Lanez was just really unfortunate. And I think, too, what was really indefensible for me was the way that she kind of tried to co-opt this language of like transformative justice and like, this idea that prison shouldn't be punitive and we should try to figure out how we can rehabilitate people. Well, that's kind of not how transformative justice works, right? In order for it to actually work, the person who has done the harm has to acknowledge that they've actually done the harm. As far as we know, Tory Lanez is still trying to avoid accountability and avoid saying that he actually did this and that this actually happened. There's been no real, like I said, accountability on his part, but no efforts to repair the harm in any way either. So, it's sad to see people who have big platforms kind of co-opt the language of, these transformative justice practices when really that's not how it works. And it's just another way of helping him avoid accountability.
We should say Megan Thee Stallion was noticeably absent in the court, but she did write a letter that was read aloud on Monday. And in that letter, she mentioned that she just can't be in the room with Tory again. And she shared that even though she's healing, she will never be the same. You mentioned earlier that you're an abolitionist. Do you think the sentence can even make up for all the turmoil that Megan has faced all throughout these few years?
Absolutely not. Like I said, I think the way that the carceral system as it exists today operates, like I don't see any real mechanisms being put in place to actually repair the harm that's been done, restore any kind of meaningful relationship, or take real accountability for what's happened. My biggest hope is that this is a chance again for Megan to kind of be validated in her experience and get a chance to finally move on from this situation. But as far as kind of, making up for what's happened, I don't think there's any real way to make up for an experience like what she's been through, not just being shot, but everything that happened in the aftermath.
The thing that gets thrown in Megan's face all the time is that Tory was in this moment in his career that was like really promising. And I actually think it's true that he was at this moment in his career that was really promising. He was sort of set to sort of escalate to the next level of his career. But the idea that the narrative that keeps being thrown in Megan's face is that she's sort of blamed, right? She's the one who's supposed to take responsibility for his downfall. What do you make of the conversation around blaming her for literally his actions? He's the person who's responsible for this. How did it come to be that people place that blame on Megan's feet, do you think?
Honestly, that did not surprise me when that came out to be the narrative, because that's just par for the course with the kind of, hyper masculine, super patriarchal society that we live in. And then you add on the layer of, just her being a Black woman and the way that Black women are never seen as real victims. So people from jump never really saw her as a real victim. So when it came down to him needing to take accountability in a real way and actually being punished for this, everyone now sees that as an overreaction. And then everyone sees her as having destroyed this man's career when really he's still to this day not taking any real accountability, and she deserves to have her experience be taken seriously, and for there to be some kind of, recourse for what she's been through. But ultimately, I think the world doesn't see Black women as real victims. And I think, the kind of patriarchal society that we live in, we're always looking for ways to kind of not only absolve men, but continue to uphold them and uplift them even when they do wrong. And so I was not surprised at all to find that people were blaming her when she did nothing at all.
Tayo, it is always a pleasure to have you here speaking your truth. Thank you so much for being on the show today. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Of
course. Tayo Barrow is a culture critic and columnist for The Guardian. She joined me this morning from Toronto. And that is it for our show today. Remember, by the way, you can listen to this show anytime that you'd like, live or on demand on the CBC Listen app or wherever you get your podcasts. Also, our show is now streaming on YouTube. Go find the CBC Podcast YouTube page and you will find us there. My name is Elamin Abdelmahmoud. It's been a pleasure to be with you. Hey, I'm going to be here tomorrow. If you're going to be here tomorrow, I would love it if we'd hang out again. Can we do that? See you then.